What's up guys and welcome back to another brand new episode of Minecraft Hardcore. In this episode I really needed to see the sun again after I spent so much time underground in the last episode. This is why I dedicated myself to building a Viking lodge outpost which serves the purpose of a self-sufficient survival base on top of a snowy mountain. Furthermore, I built this lodge to have a safe place for storing one of my most precious items, the dragon egg. So without further ado, let's start building again, shall we? Right, so back again to another passionate project in this world, and I have to tell you guys that I was very excited to work on this kind of small and cozy building after all the darkness we've experienced in the cave lately. We will continue the Dwarven Kingdom of course, but for now I simply want to build a small survival base for us to enjoy the beautiful view over the landscape of this Minecraft world. The first thing I had to do was of course to find the perfect spot for our survival base. But actually there was no need in an everlasting search for it, because the perfect location for this outpost was located right next to our main mountain. When I flew over this location for the first time, I immediately had the idea for today's project appearing to my mind. For the building process of today's project, I decided not to plan anything ahead in creative mode and instead just to start and see what the day is holding up for us. This was one of those buildings that were simply created by simple trial and error without it having been clarified in advance what the whole thing should look like. Step 1 for me was to clear out some space for the lodge by removing all the spruce trees, which will come in handy again for building the lodge, and of course I was also in the need of some terraforming action in order to create a plateau for safe building. The most annoying part of this step was the powdered snow that was laying around here and there, and which made the process a little more difficult. But in the end I managed to create an area that I was happy with. Well, my friends, here we go with the plateau, which is the perfect preparation for a proper building process. I actually thought I had the perfect view over my starter base, which is supposed to hold up Project Odin in the future, which would have made our outpost the perfect point of view for this, until I realized that this huge and fantastic looking mountain was a little bit too high to be the snowy mountain from the home base. Well, our actual home base wasn't even loaded with render distance 18, which is why it's covered up by fog in the distance over there. However, I still think we've chosen a good spot for the lodge, because after all I can still increase the render distance without getting notable performance issues in the future. And Project Odin will be visible even with a lower render distance, but hey, psst, don't tell anyone. So with the area prepared for building, I began to try out different shapes for the lodge with dirt and spruce plank blocks at first. It was important to me to have a rough idea of the scale of this building, because this lodge is supposed to hold up some interior elements in the end that all use up a decent amount of space. And after all, it was still a lot of fun figuring out the perfect conditions for this project. First, I thought about a square design for the building, which is why I tried out to create a lodge shape consisting of different square elements. While creating the frame for it, I noticed that it was looking a little bit too clunky for being a natural built wooden lodge on top of a mountain, and so I first removed the corners of the frame before removing a big part of it almost entirely. I added some more organic looking shapes to the frame by planning out a semi-circular entrance area and a more rounded back wall. This was giving me the opportunity to build the lodge more like some kind of longhouse from the Viking age, which are buildings that are supposed to be the center of a village or Viking town in order to celebrate victories or to plan out the raids in the summer. After I was satisfied by the look of the frame, I tackled on a challenge which came along the irregular shape of the building namely the roof. I imagined designing a roof for the rather circular look of the lodge not being an easy task, but I must say in the end I managed quite fast and well fitting for the theme. Starting with a combination of slabs and stairs, I simply continued this type of roof for all the blocks of the wall later on to create a more organic looking shape for the roof as well. But before I did the actual roof, I first filled in all the walls around the frame to get a better vision of what wood type the roof should consist of. Starting off with some dark oak logs for some of the corners, I continued to fill in spruce planks at first before I added some stripped spruce logs to texture the walls a little bit more. To get rid of the bare wood look, I spiced up the walls with some deep slate at the base to provide the lodge with a stable fundament. I then put in the floor of the lodge, which consists of dark oak slabs, which are later extended with some spruce log textures as well as dark oak log textures to give it a more rough and used type of look. In addition to that, I designed a simple entrance door segment with 2 large windows in the front. In general, I decided to break through the more old-fashioned look of a wooden lodge by adding windows later on, because I still wanted to have the feeling of an open and bright mountain outpost that can be visited to escape the rather fast and dark daily life, or just to enjoy the beautiful view over the valley, and therefore windows truly are a no-brainer for me right there. Coming along this point of the building process, it was finally time to move on building the roof, and as all the parts of the lodge coming together considering the colors of the blocks, I decided to build the roof out of dark oak wood, which turned out pretty nicely. I really like how the shape of the roof adds more of this longhouse vibe to the building, and it's exactly what I wish to see at this point. To complete the roof, at least for the front now, I once again tried out some things to add more variation to the segment above the entrance door. It took some minutes to figure out how I was imagining the style of this part, but after a while I came out with this pretty Viking looking type of roof with the signature horns on top of it. This small detail is giving a good hint on what this building is supposed to be. Having done the front of the lodge confronts me with another challenge in terms of building, namely to mirror the roof for the back side of the building as well. This was a little bit tricky because the shape of the roof depended on the respective blocks of the front wall of the lodge, and I haven't built it congruous. So I once again had to figure out how to build the roof by trial and error. In the end, I decided to mirror the roof almost identical to the design of the front, even though it extended slightly over the edge of the rear wall. I think after all, this was the smartest decision, because so I made sure to maintain the oval shape of the upper layer of the roof. This was important to me due to some things I had in mind for the interior. So now, with the completed roof, the lodge is looking like this, and I really like how all of this is coming together. With all this progress done, I began to complete some tasks for the exterior design of the lodge, and I did this by adding some small pillars across the rim of the extended rear wall at first. After I did this, I quickly added a small open fireplace in the middle of the lodge, which was built into the floor. Then I completed the side walls of the building to prevent weather and all the mobs from getting inside, and in addition to the open fireplace inside, I decided to build another level for the roof in order to have a kind of natural chimney for the smoke of the fire. Therefore, I added some more small dark oak pillars with another roof on top of them, which consists of dark oak slabs this time. I decided to build it like this because a normal fireplace built out of bricks and granite maybe would have looked a little bit too modern for the era I'm intending to aim on. My next challenge was to come up with an interior design for the lodge, and if you know me and my way of building my projects, you probably know that I am terrible at designing interiors. I mean, I had some ideas what kind of elements could fit into the lodge, but the overall picture of them being built was just developed in the progress. However, I had to think about how to design the interior look of the roof, because normally I would have added more floors and connected with some stairs, but this time this wasn't possible due to the fireplace and the smoke. So I went with some kind of wooden paneling for the edge of the walls in order to smooth out the transition between the walls and the roof. Then I added some more dark oak pillars to support the lodge and to break up the rather empty looking interior at this point. Following my original idea of the interior I intended to build, I added a large table around the fireplace, which is supposed to be the feast table for all the Viking warriors coming home from their raids, sharing their stories and, of course, lifting their horns. For a chair design I went with dark oak slabs again, connected them with dark oak doors, which unfortunately still have the rather unfitting doorknob texture, but I couldn't find a texture pack which removes these pixels. Our feast table was completed by adding this plank hanging down the ceiling, which is meant to carry some candles later on. Eventually I textured the floor with the different log types, and then I added some decoration and workstations to the interior in order for the warriors to repair their weapons and armor and to display some of the most valuable armors that were looted during the raids. Speaking of most valuable, I had to fly back home again to get some of the most valuable items for me, namely my treasures from raiding the end dimension, my dragon heads, and of course the dragon's egg. Placing down these treasures grants me the seat of the Earl of this place, because after all I am the creator of this place, and so I demand my seat as the leader of the Vikings. So we are almost done with today's project, and I am very happy with our lodge so far. The interior as well as the exterior design is done, and normally I would say we can end the video right here, but there are actually still some tasks to complete in order to have the survival outpost we need out here. First of all, I dug out a cellar for the lodge to provide me with more space to build some fields in the underground. The temperature above ground is way too low to grow crops, and therefore I moved underground again to supply the lodge with enough food during winter time. The overall design of the crop cellar is rather unspectacular, but it holds up enough possibilities for being extended in the future. And here we go with our crop cellar. Now the only thing we still need are some crops to plant them. I went with the 4 main crops for our food supply. We have of course some carrots to craft golden ones when they are mature, and some potatoes to bake them over the fireplace. In addition to those 2, we also have some wheat growing down here, as well as beetroot for the most tasteful Viking stew. One thing that was a little weird about the building process was that I couldn't find any wheat seeds to plant them, even though I was at day 400 right there. So 400 days in this Minecraft world couldn't supply me with enough of the easiest to get item in the game, which is why I had to break grass blocks at this point. But after this, the crops in the cellar were finally planted and now they can grow to supply all the lodge's visitors. We are almost done with the project. I just wanted to add some candles to the lodge, which is why I had to search for some beehives in the world in order to place them down behind the lodge. So now there's not only a cosmetic purpose to the project, but also a small functional one by having the beehives there that provide us with honey and honeycombs in order to build honey blocks and candles. The last thing I really wanted to do was to add a little bit of lore to this place. As you might remember, we've discovered a mysterious energy flowing through our mountain at home, and it seems like this energy can actually be found everywhere throughout the world. In our home base, the dwarves discovered this energy and they use it to enrich their metals, but for some of the other locations where the energy has no actual way to escape the underground, cracks appear from which the power of mana emerges in the form of so-called Yggdrasil rifts. These rifts are natural results of the pure power of the mana, and they also enrich the environment around them with pure life. So now we also achieved a connection between the different areas of this world by creating some more lore fragments in order to make the world feel a little bit more alive and coherent. Well guys, we are done for today. I hope you did enjoy the episode. Make sure to check out the video's description, and I thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, my friends, and I'll see you next time.